We have traded tens and tens of millions of dollars in individual transactions. We've seen it all, I can assure you.
What benefits does Caleb and Brown provide that you can't manage on your own?
Our operations team can get the best rates possible because we have access to the most amount of liquidity in the space as well.
There's no withdrawal limits on Caleb and Brown.
No withdrawal limits.
Yeah, it sounds good to me. All of that sounded good. So thank you, Jim and Jake, for being with us here today. I know my audience is eager to have their questions answered, so we're going to jump right into it. But before we begin, can you two please introduce yourselves and give us a little background of how you got involved with Caleb and Brown?
Sure, maybe I'll start here. So we started Caleb and Brown in 2016. I've been with the business right since the start when we were just a 6-person team. So I'm the chief commercial officer and one of the owners of Caleb and Brown. We've operated for quite a while in terms of crypto terms, but prior to Caleb and Brown, I've been in the crypto space since 2013. So a little while now, most of my adult life, and it's basically all that I've ever done. I'll hand it over to Jim.
Yeah, great. Hey, thanks for that, Jake, and hello to everyone. My experience is not as early on as Jake. I got into crypto back in 2017, found it, super interesting, became a really big passion of mine. And previously to Caleb and Brown was working at Accenture, which is a big management consulting firm, helping companies define their Web3 and metaverse strategies. And now, as of more recently, working at Caleb and Brown, and I'm the business development manager here, essentially looking at ways that we can help grow and facilitate support for our customers. So that's my experience, and yeah, really looking forward to chatting today.
Thank you. I have a very quick question for Jake, because you said you've been in crypto since 2013. I believe I first heard about Bitcoin in 2014, and I did some research and I looked at the price of Bitcoin around that time. It was like $300. So did you happen to get into Bitcoin that early?
Yeah, if you want the detailed answer, so I'm 28 years old now, so I was a lot younger back then. I was actually working at Kmart Australia while going through my studies. So I don't know if you guys have Kmart in the US and stuff.
I think they're bankrupt. Do you guys still have it over there?
We still have it over here.
Oh, wow.
It's probably the closest thing is probably like a Primark if you're in the United Kingdom, or like a Costco or something if you're in the US. And I was working away there while doing my studies. And the reason I got into cryptocurrency, because one of the subjects that I did for an economics unit that I was doing was around like niche new parts of the internet, like how is the internet going to change the world of finance? And I heard of Bitcoin because a lot of my friends were like really in this like cypherpunk movement. They were coding, they were big on their computers, they were really trying to navigate the nuances of the internet, so to say. So as a result of that, I just thought, oh, well, this is kind of cool. And it just made sense to me. So I thought, well, I like Bitcoin. Why don't I just make my studies a little bit more entertaining? I can actually write about something I like instead of bonds or something of that sort, which everyone else was doing. So I ended up doing my studies largely revolved around talking about Bitcoin. I ended up talking about like the wild use cases, how, some people at that point in time weren't using it for the most savory activities, we'll say. And I thought, that's really bad. But at the same time, it's that the technology itself isn't inherently bad by any means. It just happens that some people are using it for bad purposes. From that point forward, I did that assignment. I thought, well, damn, I've kind of learned a bit about this. Maybe I should actually just invest myself. This sounds pretty logical at this point. So truth be told, my first Bitcoin that I ever purchased would have been 2013 with my Kmart salary. And I think it would have been in Australian dollars. It was a few $100s at the time. Maybe like 150 US or so. That's just without looking at the chart, this ballpark where it is. Yes, I still have that Bitcoin to this day. I don't intend on selling it anytime soon. I wish Kmart was paying me a little bit more because I would have preferred to get a little bit.
Wow, that is awesome. That is awesome. Wow, thank you for sharing that. Okay, so we're going to just go ahead and jump right into the questions. Our first section is account setup and requirements. So question number 1 is, what are the fees and initial deposits for opening an account?
Yes, I can take this one. I might just quickly give a quick refresher and overview of what we do. So we're a cryptocurrency brokerage firm. We essentially allow for customers to buy, sell, swap, and safely store assets with us. We're predominantly focused on crypto, but we can talk about sort of, the future state at the sort of towards the end of this session. But it's quite different to how a normal exchange or crypto platform works. Every customer gets their own broker. So they get their own dedicated broker, which helps them facilitate trades, essentially talk through their crypto journey. In terms of any fees or deposit amounts to actually create an account and get started, there's none at all. So you can create an account, there's no fees involved, it's free to create an account and actually speak to a broker. And then it's really up to the client's decision on whether they actually want to invest in us. One of the key things that our brokers, and I think as a business, we really emphasize with our clients is do your due diligence on us. We're not expecting you to invest straight away. We want you to try the platform. We want you to speak to your broker and introduce yourself. And then from there, you can make a decision on whether you want to invest with us. But there are no costs to get started. So it's free, and we very much implore all of your customers to at least try the service.
Awesome. Okay, question 2. Can someone transfer their existing crypto from an exchange such as Coinbase to their Caleb and Brown account?
Yes, they can. So it is quite seamless in that sense. It's similar to a normal exchange where we host and trade, I think, over now 300 plus assets. And for any of those assets, you'll get your own sort of dedicated wallet address. And then it's quite seamless to transfer funds from not only Coinbase or an exchange, but be able to buy crypto and fiat through us as well. So we allow for transfers, but we also allow for the purchase of assets on our platform as well. So it is quite seamless. And again, because we have that customer support service behind us, if there are any issues with that, you can always call your broker and we can help assist with that as well.
Okay. So question 3, does my crypto need to be in a trust to open an account with your firm? And I'm going to go ahead and join question 4 into this. So we'll make it a general, but they're saying, do they need to open a separate bank account specifically for use with Caleb and Brown, or can they use an existing bank account?
Okay, so I can answer. The first one is you don't need a trust in order to trade with us. We certainly provide that optionality. So the great thing about Caleb and Brown is if I personally want to invest as myself as an individual, which I do with Caleb and Brown, I can just set up an account and it's just a regular KYC process. But in my instance, I have a family trust as well, where my family wants to get exposure to crypto assets as well. You can sign up and create and set up your trust with us as well. So we give you that option, but you certainly don't need to set up a trust in order to invest with us. You can just set up your own individual account. The second part of that question, and I'll just quickly and bluntly say, no, you don't need to create your own or a separate bank account in order to trade with us. We major with some of the top banks all around the world. You're more than willing and able to use your existing bank account to invest and buy assets and buy fiat, or even withdraw your assets into your bank account through Caleb and Brown as well.
The next question is there any difference between setting up a personal account versus a business account?
It's a good question. I think the only key difference is really just that onboarding phase. So with a LLC account, we do require further documentation. So things like, company operating agreement, at times, shareholder registry, things that are just essentially the key documentation that you would have done to set up your business. We just require that in order for you to trade under that entity. But in terms of once you're on the platform, whether that's an entity account or just yourself as an individual, it's quite seamless. It's exactly the same experience. You still get a broker at the end of the day. I think the main thing really is just how you get onboarded. I don't know, Jake, if there's anything else I've missed there in terms of the experience itself.
I think you've covered it quite well. So on our end, because we're a premium brokerage model, we're more expansive in what we can offer. So that doesn't only mean we can trade far more coins with greater liquidity and all those bells and whistles. It also means that, Marcus, if you've got a self-directed IRA, a family trust, you might have a company in another country altogether. Because we're a personalized service, we can ensure that that's onboarded as seamlessly as possible. Now, as Jim mentioned, if you set up an individual account, that's very easy stuff, driver's license, you name it, it's finished, done and dusted. If you've got an overseas entity with several other shareholders, there might be, 2 or 3 emails exchanged back and forth just so the team can safeguard your investment vehicle and get that onboarded. Beyond that point, though, we can bank with any of these entities. We can trade with any of these entities. And it all just comes down to empowering what the client wants at the end of the day. So if you want it to be complex with heavy entity structures, go for it. We'll take care of you. If you just want a personal account, you want to buy and sell some coins with the benefit of a brokerage solution, by all means, we'll help you there too.
Awesome. So are there any residency or nationality restrictions when it comes to opening an account with Caleb and Brown?
I can grab this one. So we trade with clients all around the world. We're an Australian company, as you can probably pick up now by the accents. Primarily Australian, American, Canadian clients. We have clients around Europe. We have clients in Southeast Asia. You name it, really. The only countries that we explicitly cannot trade with are sanctioned countries. So, if you're listening to this from North Korea, we'd love to be able to work with you, but unfortunately for regulatory reasons, we cannot. We can't work with clients in the state of New York because of the BIT licensing regime that they have there. And we currently can't onboard clients in the United Kingdom, although that is something that we are looking to gear up towards the licensing and so forth so we can activate that jurisdiction. But outside of that, pretty much every other country, it's not a problem whatsoever.
And the last question for this section, and I don't completely understand it, but maybe you two will. It says, can I open an account with Caleb and Brown after a liquidity event and still be able to withdraw funds?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. I mean, it very much depends on the definition of what you'd call a liquidity event. What I would say is that we very much do facilitate a seamless process when it comes to withdrawing your assets at the end of the day. So we don't have withdrawal limits. We don't have withdrawal fees. You're not going to have a support ticket with an exchange waiting 15 days to hear back for a withdrawal request. We very much create that very seamless process. So if there is a large liquidity event or something happens in the market and for whatever reason you do need to act quickly, you have your broker there to help facilitate your withdrawal process as quickly and as seamlessly as possible. What I would say is that when it does come time to sell your assets, whether it's with crypto or whether you transfer your assets over, we do have a team of experienced traders that really look after you to make sure you get the best rate possible in terms of when it comes time to sell. We've never had any downtime as a business that's been around since 2016, which unfortunately we can't say for a lot of the exchanges out there. I mean, that's because we take, our customer custody and our availability to our customers incredibly seriously. So in the event of a liquidity event, it is very seamless and easy for our customers to be able to withdraw into their bank account from there.
Very good to hear.
And that's what they meant by a liquidity event, unless I've misinterpreted that.
Yeah, it sounds good to me. All of that sounded good, so we'll go with it. All right, so moving on to the next section, fees and transactions. What are the fees for moving larger amounts of crypto or cashing out?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'll quickly start with what our fee structure actually is, and then I can speak towards sort of your larger amounts or larger trade volumes. So at Caleb & Brown, we charge a transparent flat fee of 3.5%. And that's on a buy, sell, or swap. And that's the only fee we charge. So there's no brokerage fees, there's no slippage, there's no hidden costs like spreads that you unfortunately see sometimes on exchanges, and there's no custody fees as well. So the only fee that we charge is that flat 3.5% fee. However, when it does come to sort of your larger transactions, or whether it's a larger market cap asset like say Bitcoin or even stable coins, there is that flexibility on that 3.5%. What I would say is that it is on just a case-by-case basis with a customer's particular broker. So at the end of the day, we want to make sure that our customers are well looked after and they do get a competitive rate, especially when it comes to sort of your larger volume trades. And that's something that can be negotiated and discussed with the broker, with your dedicated broker. So what I would say is that it starts at 3.5%, but it does vary on a case-by-case basis.
I guess I might just add to that briefly. We took the approach when we started out this business, it was built on the basis that there's so much noise in the industry. There's so much uncertainty. It's ripe with scams, bad actors, long support tickets, you name it. And what we found was actually one of the worst parts of the industry was how misleading fee structures could be. So there'd be like FTX as an example. They would advertise almost zero fees. So you're telling me this company's spending hundreds of millions of dollars, but they got zero fees. They're not making any money whatsoever. Doesn't make sense. Now, obviously what happens, you look behind the scenes and they're a tremendously bad example in the basis that it was an act of fraud that was going on. But what we've found is there are several exchanges, there are several businesses in the space where they might say, oh, our fee is 0.002%. So basically nothing. But then when you actually execute a trade, you're thinking, well, CoinGecko says this coin's trading at $17. Why am I paying $19.30 for it? And the reason why is because they'll have dynamic spreads. So a dynamic spread is basically a nice professional way of saying, hey, we're going to charge you more for the underlying asset, but maybe on a quiet time in the market, we won't rip you off as much. But if it gets really busy and you're really desperate to buy and sell these coins, we're going to give you the worst deal possible, and we're going to take like 5% plus of what you're trading. So we take the approach of thinking, look, we have a personal relationship with clients, and we say, hey, mate, this is going to cost $100, $200, whatever the case may be. It's black and white. It's super simple. There's no room for uncertainty. And then we can get the best price possible. We can make sure there's no withdrawal fees, no foreign exchange costs, banking costs, anything like that, because we've been really crystal clear and said, this trade is going to cost you X amount of dollars. No questions asked. We're on the same page. It's good, fair business.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, so the next question is, how quickly can I liquidate assets and have the funds transferred to my bank account after selling crypto?
I guess it's on a case-by-case basis. What I would say is that we do facilitate liquidation and withdrawal as seamlessly as possible. It's usually, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Jake, but it can be even within the same day. Where I say it's on a case-by-case basis is sometimes if it's a lower liquidity asset that's maybe a smaller market capped asset and you hold a large portion of it, a lot of the time, and it's something that happened a few days ago with someone trying to get out of their entire Vulcan Forge position, right? A lower liquidity market cap. What we essentially did was we had our experienced traders in our back end help facilitate that trade through a process called trade slicing. So they'd essentially sell little portions of the asset as we went to ensure that it didn't move the market too much. So that was a scenario where the trade actually took a little longer than anticipated, but it was actually for the benefit of the customer and ensure that they got the best rate possible and that it didn't move the market too much or that the customer didn't suffer from too much slippage. So there are scenarios where actually it takes a little longer, but that's at the benefit of the customer. And again, that's something that our team of traders will work hand in hand with the broker, who in turn will work hand in hand with the customer to make sure that that's what they want the best rate for that asset. Now, if you just want to quickly execute that, sure, that's possible, but that's where you'll start to incur, maybe issues with in terms of getting the best rates possible because of that lower liquidity asset. So the withdrawal to your bank account is quite seamless, but it is dependent on a case-by-case basis.
That makes sense. Thank you. Okay, the next question is, can you set high and low limit orders with Caleb and Brown?
Yes, so within our platform, we have a space where you can set target orders for both buys and sells. So that is something that you can do with your broker and can talk about your broker in terms of, what's my exit strategy or what's the best time to enter the market. And they can facilitate those orders for you. But in turn, if you want to set your higher limit orders or sell orders, you can also do that within our platform as well.
I think just to add to that there as well, because a lot of the questions we kind of go through are saying like, how does a brokerage differ to an exchange? Like, can you do this? Can you do that? So we'll kind of give some examples organically as these questions arise. So if someone is saying, hey, I've got 5 different altcoins and they all operate on completely different blockchains, a lot of the time customers get a bit flustered because when the market moves really fast, you're trying to get into your ledger, you're trying to get into your Exodus wallet, your Trust wallet, you're losing private keys and you're freaking out because you see the prices roaring like this. So on our end, we can actually pair all of these altcoins directly into US dollars, British pounds, Canadian dollars, you name it. Now, what I mean by that is it means that if we receive coins, we receive it in a cold storage vault dedicated for that client and that client only. We can then set limit orders to sell those coins at any set price as well. So a client can say, hey, I'm going to send you Casper, XRP, VeChain, Chainlink, Ethereum, Bitcoin, Solana, whole variety of different projects, and they can all have various staggered limit orders. And then as they get hit, whether it's Christmas Day, you name it, you'll get notified of the order and the funds can just be withdrawn straight to your bank account with no trade maximums or anything. So that's one thing that differs from a lot of exchanges where you have to pair it against like Tether, and then you've got to move the Tether somewhere else. You've got to then sell that to US dollars. You've then got a withdrawal limit. It can become there's a lot of admin work, and you can also rack up quite a lot of small expenses here and there, but they all add up a lot over time.
And I just want to reiterate or ask again to be sure, there's no withdrawal limits on Caleb and Brown as far as fiat.
No withdrawal limits.
Awesome. Okay, so the last question of this section, part of it has been answered, but I'm interested in the second part. So it says, are there specific fees for larger withdrawals or conversions? For example, $10 million, $1 billion. And have you ever dealt with trades this large?
I might grab this because over the years I've seen no shortage of bear markets and bull markets. In the bull markets, so truth be told, in the bull markets we do get very insane transactions. There are clients who make big multiples on from Bitcoin all the way down to the most outrageous altcoin or meme coin, whatever it may be. We've seen it all, I can assure you. Now, we have traded tens and tens of millions of dollars in individual transactions. We've withdrawn it to customer bank accounts. We've received it to our bank accounts. We've had trades. We had a trade the other day that took 72 hours to get executed. I mean, around the clock. So our traders working across Australia, across America, you name it. It all depends. So on our end, we can execute these transactions. The larger the trade, the more risks there are, and the more a premium service like ours really shows its value. Because if you're trying to sell, say, $10 million worth of an altcoin, you can obliterate the market. Like, you can bring the price down heavily because the order book, the sum of the buyers and the sellers that are in the marketplace, are not going to be enough for a whale like you to come in and just take everything down. So using a professional service like ours ensures that you can very seamlessly just get rid of those coins gracefully, the no shockwave effect. And what it ultimately means is you're going to get the most money out of the transaction. From that point forward, look, if it's a large trade like that, of course, we'll negotiate fees, we'll detail the process, we'll itemize it and tailor it to the client. Someone selling $10 million of Bitcoin is a very different transaction to someone selling $1 million off an altcoin that has $100,000 daily trade volume. It's completely case by case. But that's why we decided to use a brokerage solution, because that way we can actually have that personal relationship, walk through the process, tailor everything to the needs of that individual client, make sure they're getting a really good deal and they're really happy. We have their bank details. We can get the trade done in blocks, tranches, wire funds to their account, send some in euros, send some in US dollars, whatever they want. And it's just really easy when we have that overkilled process like that. I would be stressing out if I was in exchange, seeing the trade come through and an angry client on the support desk. I wouldn't envy that.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Okay, our next section is custody and security. So the first question is, does Caleb and Brown take custody of my crypto? And the next question connected is, do they hold a person's keys to their crypto?
That's a very relevant question. And I'm glad that people in your community are focused on the security and the custody, because it's often a boring administrative topic, but it's the most important topic. That's just the reality of it. So on our end, this is our stance. We offer a custody solution to clients. It's an institutional grade custody solution. We partner with Fireblocks. We have in-house developers, operations staff, risk management, which ensures that we can offer an industry leading product. Now, we make zero money from customers holding assets with us. We're not lending it out. We're not staking it. We're quite literally doing absolutely nothing. We're burying it in the ground in an itemized vault for an itemized client. It's the most boring thing possible in terms of crypto businesses. But we've never been compromised and the client's never lost $1 from our custody solution. That being said, the reason we make it free, the reason we overkill the process is because we want clients to be empowered and we want clients to have that guaranteed quality assurance. In saying that though, we also want clients to be educated. We want clients to be empowered, not through just depending on us, but through having the self-sovereignty on their own end. So a lot of our clients, they'll set up a ledger, they'll set up a Trezor, they'll find a hardware solution that works really well for them. We'll help them set it up. We'll help them send a small test transaction. We'll verify it over the phone. We'll go through that process so they can say, hey, Jake, hey, Jim, I want to send some Ethereum, some XRP, some Chainlink, whatever it is, to my Ledger Nano S that I've purchased. And I'm really excited to use it. I know the ins and outs. Let's get this done. Some clients are thinking, hey, Jake, I'm busy with work. I'm traveling all the time. I trust you guys. You've got a great track record, thousands of reviews online. I'm going to leave some coins with you guys. So that way, when the market really heats up, I can just get them sold very seamlessly. Conclusion, whatever works best for you as a customer is what we're going to want you to do. If you're not confident with your own storage, please leave it with us. Let's work on it together. We can, take the time to jump on a Zoom call and walk you through the process. On the flip side, if you're super confident with your storage solution, don't fix what isn't broken. Let's get your coin sent out.
Yeah, I think that really does just emphasize that, like, at the end of the day, it is up to the customer and what they want. We're never, as a business, going to say, or a broker's never going to say to a customer, hey, you need to move all your assets, all 100% of your crypto assets with us. I know that Jake and I personally have some assets that we store in our own ledgers and cold storage. So at the end of the day, it is up to the customer and what they feel most comfortable with, as Jake mentioned. And that's just what we help facilitate. What works best for you as a customer. And we all often sort of emphasize to our customers that, hey, move a portion of your assets and see if you're comfortable, see if you like the service, use it as a bit of a testing ground and then go from there. So yeah, I think that really does emphasize the point around, how we help facilitate our clients in whatever they want to do in their crypto journey.
Great. So here's another interesting question. I don't fully get it, but you two are much more experienced than I am. So it says, can I use a cold wallet to protect my hot wallet investments?
Okay, so I think what the client might be saying there is they have a hot wallet already and they want to improve the security of that hot wallet. So let's use MetaMask as an example, or Phantom Wallet, for example. Now, they're those little web icons you have on your screen, and they're very easy to log in and out of. You just put in a password. Once you've set it up, you can move through different chains. It's really good. I encourage everyone to try out these hot wallets. I assume what they're asking is, now that I've got that hot wallet, can I improve the security of it via a hardware wallet? Because the word hardware wallet is often kind of coined as a cold storage wallet or a cold wallet. The short answer is yes, you can. If you purchase a Ledger Nano S, if you purchase a Trezor device, there's several other brands out there. Once you get that, if you have an existing wallet, you can actually start to embed that into your hardware wallet. Now, the easiest thing you can do is actually set up a new MetaMask account whereby the private key is derived from that hardware wallet itself, and then simply send your coins across. And then that becomes your new MetaMask account that you use. And the only way you can log into it is through physically plugging in your hardware wallet device. So that way you get the benefits of using the hot wallet like MetaMask, but it's the login process and the confirmed transaction process involves a physical device. So if anyone's exploring that, I would definitely encourage that. If you are just using MetaMask on your computer without a hardware wallet attached, just be aware that if you're browsing the internet, you're in Telegram and Discord chats, the moment that you hit a link which is malicious, you can have malware installed on your computer, and you do run the risk of actually compromising access to that wallet on your computer. So long story short, get excited with the industry, but leverage a cold storage solution or a custody provider like ourselves if you can.
Now, I have a personal follow-up question. So if one were to, in the way that you explain, link their hot wallet to their cold wallet, and that might not be the perfect way to phrase it, but if one were to do that and the platform such as MetaMask were to be compromised, would that easily pass on to your hard wallet?
So MetaMask is effectively a nice glossy user interface. The actual infrastructure of your cryptocurrencies is always the private key itself. If MetaMask was to have a compromise which would expose people's private keys, then that would be a disaster. I don't know enough about the fine technicalities of the MetaMask platform and the operation to really break down how that could happen. To the best of my knowledge, it actually couldn't happen because the process of which you derive your private keys is sovereign to that exact user. MetaMask has no scope of that whatsoever. In saying that though, with a lot of these platforms, they still run the vulnerability of user error. I think that's really the main issue here. Look, MetaMask, it's on you. This is decentralized finance. It's empowering for individual users, but it's also disempowering in the event that you find yourself caught off guard or make a mistake. So I think that if you do use MetaMask, you set up your private key, the process of which you write that down from the screen when you're setting that up, that's really your point of risk. I know that MetaMask has a lot of processes in place to ensure that it's as secure as possible on their end, but they can't be responsible for user error. If you take that private key and you save it on a Google Doc, and then your password to your email is literally the word password, and someone gets access to it, I can't say that that's MetaMask's fault, as much as I'm sure MetaMask would be very sorry for you.
Thank you. I'm going to combine two questions to end off this section. And so it is, what security protocols are in place for protecting crypto assets held by Caleb and Brown? And In the case of an exchange hack or a global crypto exchange shutdown, how would Caleb and Brown ensure that clients' assets remain safe?
That's a really good question. So I'll start with I might even do it back to front. So if there's a global shutdown, let's say Binance, KuCoin, Coinbase, all these household name exchanges, tomorrow they're all gone. They're dead, finished. The fact is that would not compromise your assets with Caleb and Brown. We use third-party services for liquidity. We trade with over-the-counter trading desks. We trade with institutional liquidity providers. That's how we source our coins. However, the funds that we use to source these assets is our own funds. So over the years, we're a completely privately owned company, and we have built our balance sheet over the years so that we can provide our own capital to have the liquidity to execute your trades. So if a client says, hey, I've sent $10,000, I want to purchase this coin. We have $10,000 of our own money, which we're going to purchase that coin for you. So when your funds come into our bank account, everything reconciles. It's very easy business. In the event that all these exchanges were to go down, it wouldn't affect us because client assets are not held on those exchanges. All of our client assets are held in the custody solution that we provide. We partner with Fireblocks. We have unique vaults per client, per blockchain. Those coins are completely segregated and they're offline. They don't exist as far as these exchanges are concerned. Any relationship that we have with a third party is our own money. So if Binance isn't working and KuCoin isn't working and Coinbase isn't working, that's not a problem. We source liquidity from decentralized finance protocols. We source liquidity from OTC trading desks, various funds in the space, various platforms that regularly buy and sell at an institutional level of volume. It's not a problem at all for customers. Now, it would be terrible for the industry if that were to happen. The price impact on cryptocurrencies would be horrendous, but the bottom line is customers wouldn't lose their assets. And I can say this with confidence and put my money where my mouth is because if you can see everything on chain. Clients can see, hey, I withdrew coins from Caleb and Brown when FTX, arguably the second biggest exchange in the world, went under and had a 404 error when you tried to jump on their website. We're still buying coins. We're still selling coins. We're receiving and withdrawing coins. So that's really the main thing there. I believe the first part of your question may have been answered throughout that, but just to expand on that custody solution, the security checks and balances we have involved are, of course, in the actual setup of that custody solution itself. We work with third-party providers to have the insurances in place, to have an extremely robust means to which the address is generated and accessed by us when we need to kind of withdraw those coins back to you and so forth. Beyond that, though, we enforce two-factor authentication with all of our clients. You'll receive an email, a text message. You'll need 2FA to properly use our online portal. We have all these standard processes in place. They're very easy to set up, and it's often the difference between you having a safe versus an unsafe investing experience.
Awesome. Thank you. So moving on to our next section, banking and liquidity. So the first question is, can I transfer funds from one asset to another within the account, like fiat to crypto?
Yes, you can. We support the main fiat currencies like USD, CAD, AUD, British pounds, and it allows investors to actually deposit fiat within the Caleb and Brown platform. But then once your fiat is within the platform itself, you can also then swap those assets from fiat to whichever asset you want that we store. So as I may have mentioned before, there's over 300 assets that are allowed to be tradable on our Caleb and Brown platform. So it's quite seamless in terms of how that works. It's quite an easy user interface on the portal.
I'd like to ask a question that, I can't easily ask to Coinbase or some other exchange. What dictates the tokens and the coins that you list on your platform?
Yeah, so there's a range of factors. At least I can't speak for Coinbase and those other exchanges, but at least for us, it's really about a number of factors. So whether, how big of a market cap is the token, who are the founders behind it, what's the utility? Not always do these tokens that we store have that utility, but it's always nice to know what the plans and functions are of the asset and just how much liquidity is there in the space. At the end of the day, what comes into sort of our decision on whether to list a token is A, is there customer demand? But even more importantly, B, is it something that we can protect our customers with as well? At the end of the day, we don't necessarily want to list tokens that have a really high risk of, rug pulling investors and customers. So there are a few factors that are involved, but at the end of the day, we want to make sure that if there's high demand for a customer for a specific token, we want to make sure that we're able to service that for our customers. Jake, I don't know if there's anything else in terms of what goes into it, but I think they're sort of the main things. It's really a consumer protection angle for us.
Yeah, that pretty much nails it. I think the only thing to add is the only coins that we explicitly cannot trade are coins which are, as a matter of fact, regarded as a security. Not talking about the controversies and the, opinions on the internet, but rather from a pure legal perspective, are they a security? So any coin that pays like a dividend based on profits generated, things like that. There's very few of them, by the way. I think like KuCoin shares may have been one of them, and that's about it. And then beyond that, privacy coins. The reason we can't trade privacy coins, for full disclosure, is because we need to have bank accounts so we can receive and send funds and operate as a business. The banks have a extremely aggressive, non-negotiable stance with privacy coins. If we were to facilitate trades in, say, Monero, as an example, then we would not be able to have bank accounts. It's really as simple as that. So, we can all have our own opinions on the subject matter, but at the end of the day, we need our bank accounts. So unfortunately, we can't help you buy Monero.
Thank you for that insight. Thank you. Okay, so the next question. Can you explain your liquidity pool, the sources of liquidity, and whether you do peer-to-peer transactions?
So I can answer the first part of that, and then Jake maybe can tag along in terms of the peer-to-peer transactions. In terms of the liquidity pools we use, so we aren't a market maker, which means that we don't, facilitate or have an order book ourselves. As Jake may have mentioned before, we have a range of institutional liquidity pools, OTC desks, businesses and liquidity pools that we've partnered with and have used over the years for two reasons. One, it allows us to get the best rates because we aren't focused and don't have a single point of failure. And then also the second point being that if there is an issue with a particular liquidity pool or an exchange, it means that we aren't tied directly just to them. It means that we can still access funds and access assets for our customers from a range of different areas. So that's one of the key benefits of working with us, is that there isn't that single point of failure. And it ensures that our team of traders and our operations team can get the best rates possible because we have access to the most amount of liquidity in the space as well.
In addition to that, the individual asking the question also mentioned peer-to-peer. So we do peer-to-peer trading as well. If we have one client who's selling a very illiquid coin and another client who's buying an illiquid coin, we can make sure the seller gets a really good price, way more competitive and better than anywhere else. And we can also make sure that the buyer, consequentially, also gets a really good price. Because with some of these altcoins, what might happen is if the internet says they're trading at $10, the person who sells it might only be getting $9.50, and then the person who buys it is buying it for $10.50. A lot of these things, they just go right past you. You only really discover this when you really look into the timestamp of when you made a transaction and then look at a pricing aggregate to see how much your transaction differed from what the price should have been in the market. I can't speak for others, but even for myself, when I'm rushing through transactions, I just want to get the trade done. If I'm like, on Binance or something back in the day, I just want it done. I'm not going to look at whether I got like a crappy price or anything. So as a result of that, if we can offer a peer-to-peer transaction, we can just get both people a good deal. We also sometimes find that, we can get quotes from OTC trading desks and things like that. If there's tons of liquidity in a specific DeFi protocol for that project, we'll get it from there. Whatever gets the best outcome for the customer. By outcome, I mean the trade's done as quick as possible for the best price as possible in the securest way possible, because we wear that liability to get the trade done, not the customer. That's what we'll do.
Thank you. Okay. Do Australian banks have issues with large deposits from crypto sources? For example, $100 million. How does Caleb and Brown handle this?
So the classic saying that we like to say is that banks are happy to receive our money. They don't overly enjoy sending money. So in instances in the past, sure, there have been maybe issues over larger deposits deposits transferred into caleb&brown. But at the end of the day, that's what really is part of our personalized service and is why our brokers shine. If the worst case scenario is we have to get on the call and speak to the banks and essentially say that, look, this is a legitimate transaction, we'll do that for our customer. And what I would say is that the banks are becoming more and more used to crypto services and businesses. Again, there is that hesitancy at times, especially as we've seen over the years with things like FTX, which has made Australian banks especially quite cautious. But at the end of the day, those facilitations and those deposits can get done. It may just require a bit of manual discussion over the phone, which again is part of the service that our brokers and as a team at caleb&brown, we provide for our customers to make sure those deposits are safely and securely deposited within their caleb&brown account.
And the last question in this section, can caleb&brown facilitate large real estate or commodity purchases using crypto?
So that's a very good question. Planning for the bull market, I see. So that's the right attitude for people to have. Look, this hasn't been said publicly, but we are actually exploring remittance licensing right now. Remittance licensing would enable us to effectively say, hey, Marcus, you've just sold a bunch of these. This coin's done really well for you. You're looking to buy a place in, let's say, Nantucket. I heard that's a nice spot. Never been. You're looking to get a place over there and you've got a real estate agent. They're brokering the transaction for you. If we can send the funds directly to the agency, whoever it may be in that area, to help you get that property purchased, that's what we want to be able to achieve. Right now, the only reason we can't do that is for anti-money laundering reasons. We have to send the money. If you do a trade, we've got to send you the money. We can't send it to some real estate agent in Nantucket because, you might be getting scammed or something. So there's a lot of processes we need to follow there. But it is something that we're working on. So I would say by the time we do get to this, hopefully a wild 2025, I believe we will have the remittance licensing in place. So that means if you're someone who's a potential customer listening, if you do make a really good windfall and you're looking to buy an investment property, upgrade your home, you've got a large transaction of some sort where it's more convenient for us to send the funds directly there, then we will be able to facilitate that. Get your partner a nice wedding ring or whatever the case may be. If we can send the funds directly there, it would just be so much more easy for the customer, and it's a far more premium service. People will love that. So that's what we're striving to achieve.
That's great. That's great. Okay, the next section is services and features. What is institutional grade liquidity? And how does caleb&brown achieve this across many digital assets? So we're beating this liquidity drum again, but specifically the phrase institutional grade liquidity.
Jake, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, for sure. So what happens in the crypto space is, much like kind of every other industry out there, there's a market for retail, and then there's a market for institutions. So if you're looking to get a bank account, for example, you can get an everyday bank account. It's very simple, very easy to get set up. But, Warren Buffett's probably not using the same bank account that I'm using, right? Now, it applies very much to investing, whereby if you're using a local exchange, it's not necessarily bad by any means, but it's limited to a retail product, meaning it's fit for 1 million people to sign up, 1 million people to use at once. So there's nothing really premium or advanced around it. It's a very default entry-level product. Now, so institutional liquidity means that if we're executing a trade for a customer, it's not like when you're on an exchange where you just have the buyers and sellers on the exchange. We have institutional access because there is a lot of companies that are out there where they will only trade with you if you meet very, very, very harsh minimum trade requirements. So we've got companies that we're trading hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars with on a regular basis. That's why they're happy to trade with us. But if a everyday customer called them up and said, hey, London-based over-the-counter trading desk, can I buy $2,000 worth of Bitcoin cash? They just won't even reply to your message. And they might even be quite angry that you even tried. Whereas with a company like ours, we do have that relationship. And what we can do is we can give that individual customer who might want $2,000 of that coin, we can give them the benefit and the exposure to that institutional liquidity without them having to directly go to it, because they would just be priced out. They wouldn't have a chance.
Great. Thank you for that. So can caleb&brown explain the difference between a brokerage and an exchange? And what services does caleb&brown provide that set it apart from other brokers or exchanges in the crypto space?
Sure. So I'm happy to answer that. I think the key difference is with a brokerage service like Caleb and Brown's, we champion customer support. Every customer that comes through our door gets a dedicated, personalized, institutional-like experience. So the way I like to describe it is think of Caleb and Brown as your private banking solution, where you get a full team around you looking after your bank account, as opposed to maybe an exchange, which is just your regular bank account. So one's a purely transactional relationship, like when you use an exchange. With us, it's more of a personalized, people-first approach. So we really make sure that our customers are well looked after. You get your own dedicated resource to essentially guide you throughout your crypto journey, which is super helpful if A, you're a beginner in the space and need to learn not only about what assets I should invest in, but also educating yourself in the space, learning about the market narratives, and also how to safely store your assets. We really help our customers and hold their hand through that process, as well as your more experienced investors that may have been around in the crypto space for a long time, who want that expert opinion to validate their investment thesis as well. So it's really a more of a high-end premium service. I think one of the biggest things, and I guess one of the things that is a bit nitpicky about the crypto space, is that lack of support, is that lack of a person on the other end. So at the end of the day, that's really what we provide at Caleb & Brown, and is one of the biggest and best distinguishing features about us. In terms of, I think you said maybe sort of the key services and things that differentiates ourselves from other players in the space. So I'll rattle off a few things, and then Jake, feel free to chime in as well. I think the first one that we mentioned before is that actual flexibility to set up an account with us, either as an individual or via an entity or via a trust as well. It gives you that flexibility to invest in a whole range of different areas, but also if I want to invest as my individual self, which, maybe a few riskier assets or altcoins in that space, I can do that. But then I can also set up a family trust where it may be invested in more of the major cryptocurrency tokens as well. So that's one of the key selling points. Another one is just our 24/7 support. So when you sign up and get your own broker, they're there for you to call whenever you'd like. But in terms of obviously, they have hours in which they sleep. A lot of those brokers are within the Australian time zone. We do have a presence in the US. We have a presence in the UK. So their emails are minded and monitored 24/7. So if something does happen in the market where it requires a quick action, we're always there to provide assistance. I think the other key thing is that we are a very seamless and reliable off-ramp. So, one of the key things that I know I've been guilty of in the past is you invest in a crypto asset and you're really happy about it, but then you don't really think about, okay, when it comes time to sell, how do I effectively sell to make sure A, I get the best rate, but B, I can sell the volume and the amount that I want to. And a lot of the time, these other exchanges or even other brokerages will have those limits, or they'll have fees on top of that. Fortunately with us, we don't charge any withdrawal fees or have any limits. So it actually makes the process, once it does come time to sell, quite seamless as well. So there are a few of the key distinguishing points. Jake, let me know if I've missed anything or you want to add to anything else there.
I think you've covered it quite well there.
Okay, so does Caleb and Brown offer any wealth management or investment advisory services beyond just executing trades?
Okay, so the brokerage is what we've predominantly spoken about in this call today, and where the majority of the questions are. We provide general advice throughout the brokerage, so your broker will absolutely give you an opinion. They'll just simply focus on the facts and the objectivity of the space. So your broker's not going to call you at 2 a.m. and say like, oh my God, have you heard of this new token? You need to buy it, guaranteed 100x. The reality is I don't think anyone in their right mind should be doing that. But what we will do is if a client says, hey, I'm thinking about a few different projects, I'm thinking about when I want to sell them, if I want to consolidate my portfolio, we'll absolutely have that conversation with you and help you out at every single corner of the way. No questions asked. Now, in terms of personal advice and wealth management and things of that caliber, that's not something that we can accommodate for in the brokerage. We do, however, have an asset management division within Caleb and Brown. They manage 2 funds. They're available to Australian and American wholesale investors or sophisticated investors, whichever of the two your jurisdiction recognizes. And that is a product that is completely managed by our funds team. So that is an entire hands-off approach. If you're looking to invest some money in a managed product, you're basically paying for a team of people to manage that every single day. So it's very compelling in several ways. That's something that we do offer. And if anyone listening does want to hear more about that, of course, reach out and we'll put you in touch with the professionals in that team who will be able to give the product more respect by knowing all the intricacies about it.
That's great. Thank you. And the last question of this section Is there any way to add a second person to an account or designate a beneficiary?
Yes, so clients can have a designated agent on their account. Obviously, they have to go through the appropriate approvals and disclosures to ensure that that's legitimate, and that it's not just some random person. But we do allow for delegates on accounts. I mean, it's usually a family member, it may be a lawyer, or a lot of the time, accountants will get that delegation role for their client, so then they can come on our platform and generate the necessary tax reports and transaction volumes and things like that they require to in order to do their tax lodgements, which I think we'll talk about a bit in more detail in the second section. But ultimately, yes, they can have a designated agent on their account.
Alrighty, so moving on to the tax and legal considerations section. So the first question is fairly general, and it simply says, how do we handle taxes on crypto transactions?
Okay, so on our end, every time a client does a transaction with us, deposit coins, withdraw them, buy some coins, sell some coins, limit orders, you name it, we provide a very robust transaction summary. We provide that for the client. That's not going to any third parties. We're not lodging your taxes on your behalf, nothing of that nature whatsoever. This is purely for record keeping and accuracy and your own diligence and transparency. So we'll provide you with that trade summary. We'll provide you with invoices. We can give you end of financial year summaries, reports, you name it. And we're not going to charge you for anything like that. We'll do whatever you need, no questions asked. From that point forward, it's ultimately up to the individual client to manage their own tax affairs. Now, I'm not a tax attorney by any means. I'm probably the furthest thing from one. So as a result of that, for me personally, living in Australia right now, we have our own tax authority, the Australian Taxation Office. I work with a registered tax agent over here, my accountant, and they prepare everything for me. But I get that information from Caleb and Brown. I pass that across to the accountant, and they can help get it all done from there. So we don't provide tax advice. We certainly don't pay your taxes or lodge your tax returns for you. That's something which is sovereign to yourself as an individual. But what we will do is give you all the information to make that process as simple and easy as possible. So you're not pulling your hair out, getting these huge bills from your accountant because you're trying to get data from all these different exchanges. You got no idea what you actually did over the year. We'll make it a lot easier for you.
Great. Okay, what are the key legal considerations that U.S. citizens should be aware of when using an Australia-based brokerage like Caleb and Brown?
There's really no considerations, to be completely honest. You're allowed to use the exchange. You don't have any tax obligations or reporting obligations in Australia unless you are Australian and residing here and a tax resident here. So American clients can use our product, no problems whatsoever. It's just like you sign on like any other product. We're still 24/7. So whilst I'm geographically in Australia at this point in time, if someone's emailing me right now, there's people across Australia, across Europe, across America who have access to that inbox to give a 24/7 solution. So it has no impact on customers that we're over here. You don't have any reporting obligations. As far as any kind of due diligence on the customers and being wary of international organizations, I think I would encourage people to be wary and be pessimistic. This is cryptocurrency at the end of the day. Let's not kid ourselves. But in saying that, we have an office which is advertised online. Our faces of our people are advertised online. If anyone's ever in Melbourne, we'd love to take you to the office. We literally have someone coming to the office 45 minutes from now that I'm catching up with who is a client who's flown into Melbourne, Australia. So we always encourage that open and honest human-to-human dialogue because that's often what can get rid of a lot of concerns and potential issues. If you do have very specific areas that you want to ask questions about, what's it like working with an Australian company? Am I exposed to this? Am I exposed to that? Your broker will gladly walk you through the process. But just to clarify and put people at ease, like we're a regulated Australian company, AUSTRAC, ASIC, these are major Australian regulators. They mirror up the US regimes fairly closely. I would actually say that Australia is a lot more simple and direct with regulation because it's just the federal regulation. It's not state by state like it is in the US. So as a result of that, it's super black and white. Here are the rules. Obey these rules or your directors are getting in serious trouble. I don't want to get in serious trouble, so we've been following the rules and we've got a great relationship and we're really proud to be an Australian company and we've never had any issues. Simple as that.
Thank you. And so moving on to general crypto questions. If you're someone experienced with crypto, what benefits does Caleb and Brown provide that you can't manage on your own?
I'll start us off here. I think there's a few things. For me personally, I can speak from my own situation and experience. I think the ability to use Caleb and Brown as that institutional grade custodial solution where you can store your assets safely, but when the time comes to trade those assets or have accessibility to them, you can easily access them to make trades in the market is one of the key value adds that I've experienced personally. I can only imagine, I think it was a couple years ago now, but I had a lot of USDC sat on my Ledger wallet. Unfortunately, I was overseas at the time. And I don't know if you remember this, but the USDC at one point depegged and I had no access to my cold wallet storage. So I couldn't access that wallet. I couldn't transfer those funds out. I couldn't swap them into fiat because I just didn't have the simple accessibility to actually access my cold storage wallet. So in some respects, it's actually really valuable to have not only the security standards of an institutional-like approach that we offer, but also that level of accessibility and access to a broker if for whatever reason something happens in the market and it requires you to make a quick trade. So that's one of the key things that a lot of experienced investors will have their own cold storage solution, but it doesn't hurt to have another avenue to access your funds as well. So that's one of the key things that I've experienced as a more sort of seasoned investor that Caleb and Brown has certainly helped me with.
Yeah, just to add to that, so if someone's already using several exchanges, they've got their own wallets, and they've had a good experience so far, they're thinking, well, don't fix what isn't broken. This is working. Why would I sign up with any other businesses? I think that's a really fair attitude to have, and it's an attitude that I probably mirror myself. Don't fix what isn't broken, right? In saying that, there's a lot of things that Caleb and Brown can do, which we're yet to find another service that can do. So one example we kind of illustrated earlier, you've made a massive windfall. You've got this huge trade you want to execute. We will be able to get better pricing than what your retail exchanges will get. That's fact number one. Fact number two, we're not going to have withdrawal limitations, and you're not going to be client number 5 million in a support ticket waiting to hear back to verify your account so you can get your funds into your bank account. That might seem like a small thing, but when a client, and I speak from experience, when a client is in the heat of a transaction like that, the emotions are very, very high. The last thing you want to do is have all these looming headaches and what ifs, and we simply eradicate all of that. The other thing is, if you're a client and you're really experienced and you're using these exchanges, the other thing is your time. So a lot of people, they use us because whilst they can use exchanges and they're comfortable with them, they might think, well, if I use Caleb and Brown, it's more or less the same financial outcome for smaller trades than an exchange. So it doesn't really make that much of a difference for me. The other critical thing is just ease. If you're saying, I want to purchase 7 different altcoins and just send $1 transaction, we have a local Chicago bank that's crypto friendly. We can receive US dollars on a Sunday. And even if the funds aren't in our account, we can buy all those coins for you. So a lot of those little premium features, they save you a ton of time and they give you that instant liquidity to the market so you can access it right away. And, it might take our traders at times, depending on the assets, it might take them 1 or 2 hours to process everything for the customer and get the best prices possible. The second the trade is done, the coins are already in safe custody. So for the client to achieve that without a brokerage like Caleb and Brown, it might take them several hours in buying the coins and then several hours in setting up each individual wallet account. And if you're trying to juggle a full-time job, you got kids, you want to hang out with your friends, you want to kind of let your hair down from time to time, it's not necessarily the most exciting and empowering experience. So my attitude is always like, I use exchanges and numerous DeFi platforms myself. I'm just thinking, man, I got up early today. I got a late night. I'm just going to pay someone else to figure it out for me. And I get a better deal for myself. And I love working with them. It's as simple as that.
Great. Thank you. Okay. So this is an interesting question here. Is BSC coin legit? I cannot withdraw money from it. And it seems like it was issued when my orders were filled using BNB.
Okay, so Binance Smart Chain is a blockchain which was created by Binance. It very closely mirrors that of Ethereum, and it's largely just a fork off Ethereum. So Binance Smart Chain in and of itself is not a scam. It is a legitimate blockchain. It's a network which people can kind of toggle through. So, you can go on your MetaMask and you can go from Ethereum to Optimism Network, Arbitrum, Binance Smart Chain. It's just another one of those. It's not really used all that much anymore. During bull markets, when there's a lot of projects projects launched on Binance Smart Chain, it does get a lot more utility. I will say though, a lot of the projects over the years that have been launched on BSC, a lot of them have been pump and dumps and coins that you do want to stay away from. People on Twitter called it like Binance rug chain for a period because there was just so many rug pulls on it. So I don't think that that's the mandate Binance wanted, but that's just what that's just what people in crypto unfortunately do at times. So to answer the question specifically, I don't know what project the person asking this question has, what wallet they're using, or enough information to give a concrete answer. So I definitely encourage them they can reach out. jake@caleb&brown.com is my email. Send me a direct email. I'll give you a very thorough response. I'll be happy to do that. I would say though, Binance Smart Chain is a legitimate blockchain. The BNB token is a legitimate token, and it's actually one of the better performing tokens as well, and it has been for a while. So if that's what you're referring to, you're all good. If it's something a bit more elaborate than that, then definitely send me an email.
Great. Thank you for that personalized answer. Okay, so how do you see the future of cryptocurrency regulation impacting services like Caleb&Brown?
That's a very good question. I'm happy to kick us off and then, we can have a discussion around it. I think ultimately it's very optimistic for the future in terms of crypto regulation. One of the key things that has been really great to see in the industry as of date this year is the ETF adoption, especially for Bitcoin and ETH, which are obviously the two major plays in this space. For me, that just shows that there is that clear institutional support and it brings legitimacy to the crypto industry. Not that we haven't had it before, but to have large players like BlackRock and all these Grayscale, like these big companies come into the crypto space, really provide a way in which institutional investors can invest in crypto is ultimately a really good sign for the industry. In terms of actual regulation itself, I think greater clarity is at the end of the day what we want in this industry, especially for a company like Caleb&Brown, in terms of how are these assets defined, how do customers are protected in this space by investing in crypto as well. So I think, we're starting to see a real shift. And again, the election will be a really interesting time around that, around whether it's Trump or Kamala that comes into power in terms of how crypto regulation looks like moving forward. But ultimately, we're starting to see more legitimacy come to this space, and we're starting to see a real institutional support that we haven't seen in the past before. So ultimately, we're quite optimistic on the future. And I think any regulation in terms of the clarity that we can operate in as a business is really beneficial for us.
I'll expand on that as well. So in terms of regulation for the cryptocurrency industry, it's a necessary evil. I think that's how a lot of people term it. When I first invested in Bitcoin, the majority of people in the space then were Bitcoin maximalists or part of this kind of cyberpunk movement. I'm talking about a lot of my friends who are in the space to this day. The vast majority of their net worth is on chain. They are distrusting of governments. They're digital nomads. They don't use social media accounts. They're very computer savvy, and they're not interested in any of these conversations around regulation whatsoever. In saying that, if you want adoption of this asset class, it needs to be able to be something which every single person to their own choice can be empowered within. And in order to do that, you do need to have a framework that at the very least protects consumers. So what we've found in Australia is a lot of the regulatory regime, it's surrounding ensuring that cryptocurrency businesses like ourselves, like Caleb&Brown, have a certain backbone which ensures that customers are going to be protected. So I'm actually excited for a lot of the regulatory developments in Australia because it means that companies who are not well capitalized, they might advertise themselves really well, but they don't actually have the capital to safely give that quality assurance to customers. They'll be called out. The places that don't actually have regular audits, they don't have the accounting infrastructure, they don't account for their stock, whatever the case may be, they will be called out. And I think that's unfortunate for those businesses. But as far as I'm concerned, that's a great outcome for the space because, as someone who's dealt with thousands of customers directly over the years, I've dealt with people who have experienced hacks, they've been scammed, they've been defrauded over their years. It's really, really sad. And I don't want the crypto space to be tarnished with that. So I'm excited for a strong regulatory regime. Now, looking forward into the future, obviously November is going to be a fairly momentous period for the world and cryptocurrency being a part of it. If we are to see a Harris regime, I think the general sentiment is that we probably will have a far tighter regulatory landscape And, a far tighter regulatory landscape is not inherently bad, but it does kind of bring about that question of, being tied down by a million strings. And that's something that I think a lot of crypto investors are a little bit wary of, but they're mostly wary because Harris hasn't really come out and even talked about cryptocurrency. So there's a lot of what if uncertainty. So whereas obviously Trump has been very vocal about cryptocurrency. A friend and a good friend of mine, and who's actually a client of ours as well, Farokh from Rug Radio, he actually ended up interviewing Donald Trump just 24 hours ago at his Mar-a-Lago estate. So definitely watch that if you're listening. It's a pretty cool interview. So Trump is very vocal about cryptocurrency. So irrespective about what people think about him politically or personally, whatever the case may be, specifically to crypto, he does seem to be encouraging a very relaxed and open market for American crypto businesses. He obviously has made it very clear that he wants the US to be an empowerer of blockchain technology. He wants there to be, hundreds of thousands of cryptocurrency jobs onshore for American people. And look, I think that in and of itself is great. I think America should be the leader of the cryptocurrency wave. But whether it is or whether it isn't, every politician will have their ability to impact that, but it's full steam ahead for us regardless. And I think for a lot of crypto businesses, it's business as usual regardless of the political outcome.
Well, Jake and Jim, thank you so much for joining me and answering these questions for my community. I'd like to apologize in advance for any influx of new customers that you get. Might be adding more to your plate with this video here. Before I let you go, is there any parting words you want to leave with the community?
I'd probably just say, similar to what I said at the start, that if you're looking for a high-end premium service and a business that genuinely cares about helping you in your crypto journey, Caleb & Brown's there for you. But again, at the end of the day, there's no charge to set up your account. It's free of charge. So we really recommend that customers come on, try the platform, talk to a broker, and see if the service is right for them. So, there's no obligation to deposit your money with us. So try the service and see if it's good for you.
I mirror what you say there, Jim. I think one thing that I always try and leave any conversations that I have is we're one of the few businesses in the space where you can talk to a real human being. We'll call you on our personal number, jump on a Zoom call. Even if you prefer an email exchange or maybe Telegram or WhatsApp, you name it, we'll accommodate for you. And with that being said, we welcome the opportunity to have these conversations with people directly. You don't even need to sign up with us. You can just jump on our website on our support ticket and just fire away questions. If you want to speak to a broker, the support team will loop you in. And that way, you're not exposed to anything. You haven't paid for anything. If you absolutely despise us and never want to hear from us again, we wish you all the best. Reach out anytime and, go forward. And if you have a really great conversation with us, then we'd love to keep those conversations going. So definitely encourage people just to reach out. Why not?
And I'd like to personally reiterate that the account is free, so there's no harm in signing up. I'll post links below in the description and in the pinned comment. Just click on the link, create an account. You don't have to fund it immediately or anything like that. So there's no harm. And somebody on the original video where I announced this Q&A, they left an interesting comment. They said that they suggest people sign up for an account now so that when things start going crazy, they're not put on a waiting list trying to create an account later on and getting their account approved. So again, Jim and Jake.
Yeah.
So again, I just want to thank you both for joining me, and we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Cheers, Marcus.
All right, take care.